Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Tech Recruitment Podcast. I have a special guest today for you guys. His name is Gavin Johnston, and Gavin has been in recruitment for the last 18 years. Gavin has been recruiting in marketing, in accounting, in sales, and most recently in IT. So, in today's interview, we will talk about some of the tips and tricks about IT recruitment, some of the mistakes that recruiters make, and how to avoid them. So, this will be a really cool interview. Gavin has also been training recruiters. He's been coaching and he's mentoring recruiters. So, he has lots of experience also on this side. So, we will talk about this. So, anyway, Gavin, thanks for joining us. And why don't you tell us a bit more? Why did you actually start with IT recruitment?
Actually, Michelle, I didn't mean to start in recruitment at all, but friends of mine said, Gavin, you've got to go into sales. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's something I haven't tried yet. And I go, but I've got no experience in sales. And a friend said, but my brother is looking for a recruiter. And I was a recruiter? Sales? What? I thought that was HR. And so I went to see this guy and I spent half a day looking at him. I looked at his screen and I looked at what he was doing and I listened to him on the phone and I said, oh, I can do that. It wasn't as easy as that afterwards. And so, yeah, the interesting thing about that was this was a startup. So we were a very, very, very small group of people, 2 to start off with, and then 3 the next month, and then 4 months later. And we had to do everything from scratch. My boss luckily had a lot of recruitment experience, and he trained me up. It was IT recruitment. A lot of people say, "Oh, IT recruitment is so difficult," but I didn't know anything else. I didn't know how it compared to other types of recruitment. And so I did that for 9 years. And then I was headhunted by another recruitment company in the same arena, and I went to work in London there. Completely different approach to recruitment. It was very, very interesting because you learn that actually something you've been doing for 9 years, there's a completely different way of doing the same thing. So that was very enriching. And then I thought, I've been doing this for so long, because my previous job, the longest I'd ever done a job before was 2.5 years. And suddenly I've been doing recruitment for 10 years. I thought, I've got to go and do something else. And so I set myself up as a freelance recruiter. So that's basically doing in-house recruitment. Completely different. I was absolutely amazed that something that's got the same title, recruiter, can be so different. But again, very, very interesting experience. Learned loads of new ways of working, but also I looked at it from the client side. Before I'd been selling to the client, and now I was on the receiving end. I was talking to recruitment agencies saying, "Hey, I need your help." Poor people, I think they suffered because, of course, I knew everything, everything that they were doing. And then, because I was working freelance, I wasn't always working. I had my old clients coming back to me saying, Gavin, we need your help. Come back, come back. And so I basically started on my own doing some recruitment. And slowly but surely that grew. And I was doing my own agency recruitment. I was doing in-house recruitment at the same time. But I wanted to do something else. I was looking for something that would change what kind of a job I was doing. And I thought, well, actually, I see a lot of recruiters asking a lot of questions for which I actually have the answers. I've been doing this for so long, I can help these people. And so this was, I guess around 2018. And I thought, well, I'm gonna see how I can help these people. And from there, the whole idea grew of me becoming a trainer of recruiters. And so what I do is I train and I coach recruiters on recruitment. there's so many different kind of trainings out there. Like you train people how to deal with the IT side of recruitment. I train them before you arrive. You arrive with that knowledge, and I come in just before with what is recruitment? How can you be a good recruiter? And once they've understood that, then they can come to you and understand how do we do it in IT and move forward, you know. But so that's this activity I launched last year. And one of the interesting things I think also for the people who listen to you and who watch you online is that I'm actually in the process now of writing a training on how to start your own recruitment agency. You know, in the UK, 50% of all recruitment agencies are one-person companies. They're solo recruiters. And there's a huge demand, especially since COVID. I was reading somewhere that in recent months, I think it was actually in 2021, the word recruiter was more searched for than the word developer.
Oh, wow.
So there's a bigger
Really?
shortage of recruiters than there is of developers, which is pretty crazy because that's completely new.
There is not enough developers on the market, right? So then recruiters are recruited to recruit the developers. It's crazy change.
But that's it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And even though we've had COVID and unfortunately we've got the war now in Ukraine, but still we are in a growth period. And I think that this growth period is going to continue. There's a number of things out there that say that there's going to be more need for recruiters. For example, one of the big things for us in Europe is everything to do with the new targets for 2030 around gas emissions, around being green. And so there's a lot of new software that's going to be needed. Companies are going to be doing more follow-up of their own company and how they work. So I think we're going to have a lot of work in the coming years, for sure.
Yeah. There's an abundance of opportunities in IT and IT recruitment as well, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. But you mentioned something interesting just a while ago regarding the difference between recruiters and recruiters. You know, recruiters who work in-house and recruiters who work in staffing agencies. So a lot of people who are just transitioning to recruitment, they may not be aware of this difference because the word is the same, as you said, right? But there is a substantial difference. So how should they even approach it? Like what's the difference even, whether you are a recruiter working in a staffing agency or a freelance recruiter or a corporate recruiter?
Okay, so it's actually even more complex than that. So let's start from the beginning. You've got, for me, there's two big divisions. You've got the HR side in-house, and you've got the sales side, which is more on the agency side. So if we look at HR, an in-house recruiter is not expected to do any selling. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of in-house recruiters listening to this going, hey, but I've got to sell the job to the candidate. Yes, of course. But you do not have a responsibility to bring in a certain amount of money from selling the recruitment services of your company. And so that's the big difference. On the agency side, you're a salesperson who needs to generate revenue. It just happens to be that you do it by placing candidates. On the HR side, you take what these guys do, all this, they take a part of it, which is the recruitment part itself. And so they do of course, they've got to do the interviewing side. And of course, they've got to do the managing of their hiring managers. And of course, they've got to write ads, and they've got to have an online presence and be busy with their branding. That, yes. But it's a very different kind of person who is on the in-house than there is on the sales agency side. So that's the first thing. I think one of the interesting differences to note, because I've done both, is On the agency side, it's very much about very fast paced, going out there, breaking down doors and getting in front of your client to go and sell your services.
Mm.
On the agency side, it's not easier because what you're dealing with a lot of the time is in-house politics.
Mm.
Too many meetings that you don't want to be at because you want to be out there busy finding the candidates. You've got a lot of people are suffering from their employer not having the right brand image, and therefore it's very difficult to find the candidates. You also might end up working in a company that has completely antiquated processes, completely antiquated ATS system, which is your tracking system of your candidates, might not have a budget to do anything around marketing of your brand image. So there are difficulties on both sides, for sure. They're just different kind of problems that you've got to deal with.
Mm.
On the limit between both is freelance recruiters. Most freelance recruiters I know, they become freelance because they've got this sort of sense of entrepreneurship, but they don't want this whole sales thing that you've got on the agency side. And so, yes, they've got to go and sell themselves to find assignments, but actually they operate part-time. When I say part-time, it's for a fixed duration, I should better word it, as an in-house recruiter.
Mm.
And you get a contract for 3 months, 6 months, depending on where you are, and you participate in the recruitment process of the organization you're working for. Yeah.
Mm.
Then if you look at the agency side, for me, there's the three big things on the agency side. The smallest is what they now call RPO, which is outsourcing recruitment services to large organizations. It's still a minority activity, so I won't spend much time on it. It's a wonderful way to learn the trade, but it's very intense. Yeah. Then the two big ones are you going to place people in permanent jobs, or are you going to place contractors on assignment? Different setup in both cases. If you're placing people into permanent jobs, you've got more time. It's not easier than placing contractors, freelance contractors, but it's just slower. For example, freelance contractors, you can sometimes, between the moment that you get a requirement and the person has a signed contract, it can be as short as 2 days. Nowadays, it's a bit slower, let's say a week. But on the permanent placement side, it's more often that it will take 1 to 3 months. It very much depends on the country you're in. For example, in my country, in Belgium, most people have 3 months notice.
Mm.
So your whole process is aimed around that. And you're thinking, okay, how long is it going to take me to set up an ad, to write an ad, to set up the interviews, to get the candidates and all that? And then there's a 3 month notice. So it can take quite a long period of time between the moment that you've seen your client and the moment that you are going to go and say, it's their first day. Now I can actually consider that they've started the job, and it was good. I've done the deal, you know. Because nowadays you can't celebrate before that.
Yeah.
And so I think what's important for your audience is to think, what kind of a personality am I? Am I more interested on the HR side? Am I actually a salesperson and I want to go out and do selling? Do I want to do selling but not too fast paced, i.e., I place people into permanent jobs? Or do I want everything and anything, which is place contractors?
Mm.
There is a very important thing to say, and that is that the model of different recruitment agencies does vary. What do I mean by that? I mean that for me, what I do is the full cycle of the recruitment, which is what we call 360-degree recruitment. Quite a few of especially the larger agencies, they don't do 360 anymore. They do 180. So what does this mean? It means that the side that's more dealing with the candidate is separated from the side more dealing with the client. And so even if you go into an agency recruitment situation, it is possible that you don't only have to do sales or only have to do the candidate side. I mean, I know some people that they get stressed by reading all the CVs. They want to go out there and sell. So if they're in one of these larger agencies that does 180 and they're just doing their pure selling, they can even become a key account manager and manage a number of clients, whilst they've got people in the back office who are doing all the first bit of it, or the qualification of the candidates. So I think for your audience, it's very important that they have a look in their country, because I know that you're covering many, many countries with your audience. I think it's important that in your country that you go and have a look at what recruitment agencies are there, what are the options, how do they work?
And so interesting how you sort of polarize these different options that recruiters can consider, and I'm sure a lot of people haven't even considered that it will be a different job based on the setup, based on joining a company to work inside or in-house, or to join a staffing agency. And some of the people who join the program, the training program, they want to start freelancing. They want to not necessarily start an agency themselves, but just to have this kind of one-man show business to freelance themselves. What would you say they should be careful about? What are some typical mistakes that you've seen people make when they start their own business or freelancing self-employment business?
I think before I'm going to answer your question, Michelle, I just want to make one note, because I was talking to somebody last week who was talking about going freelancing, and actually they were talking about something completely different from what I consider as freelancing.
Mm-hmm.
So just because the way of using words varies from country to country.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to clarify what freelancing is for me. So for me, being a freelance recruiter means that I've got my own company that I can build through, and I go to an organization and act as an in-house recruiter. That's for me what freelancing is. Yeah, just to clarify.
Okay.
So
So then actually quite a lot of people in our community see this slightly differently. Like they sort of want to join some networks or submit candidates to some third parties. So they don't want to join some company as sort of outsourced recruiters, right? Freelance outsourced recruiters, but they want to work for more clients at the same time, sort of standalone recruiters. That's interesting that you mentioned this.
Okay. You see? So
Mhm.
well, I think to come back to your question about the most important things, for me, the most important thing is to not forget that you've got to act as a consultant.
Mhm.
You need to be seen as somebody who is bringing value. You need to be seen as somebody who is, through your experience, going to come with solutions and really support that client. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to think, oh, I'm going to be a guru. Not at all. Most people freak out about this. They say, yeah, but I don't have enough experience. And then I look at their CV. I say, but you've been doing this for 6 years. You know, that's a lot of experience, 6 years, you know? And so the thing for me is, one, don't be worried. Go into your job every day like you've been doing it in the past. It's the same job. So you don't have to freak out and be worried about it. It's the same job. However, do this consulting. Go and talk to your hiring manager about, are you happy with how things are happening? Ask them, what are your biggest pain points? Where can I bring extra value? You've got to be seen as really like a partner, somebody that they can rely on, that you are coming in to take away part of their problem. You solve the problem and you go back to them. Are you now happy? And if they say yes, well, you're going to have repeat business. And if you're doing this over several clients, you're going to be building this network of clients that are going to go, can you come back, please?
Mm.
To give you an example, I was called, what day were we? Tuesday. I was called last week by an organization that I'd worked at last in 2018. So 4 years ago, they come and said, are you available to do some recruitment for us? I wasn't available, of course, but that's how you do it. You bring value. And I mean, I think for all recruiters, if you've got any experience, the number one thing is don't be frightened. Don't be unrealistic, but don't be frightened. Starting your agency, going freelance, don't think that it's going to be radically different from what you're doing. If you know how to be a recruiter, you can do it in any circumstance. The only thing you need to have is discipline, an intelligent approach to work, good time management. These two go together. And let's face it, recruitment is not an easy job. I mean, we're not just selling phones. We're selling expertise in people, and people sometimes fall ill, sometimes change their mind, or they get 2 or 3 offers at the same time, or their better half says, no, I don't want you away for that long, things like that. And so our job is not easy. And so you need to be ready, especially in the beginning, to really put enough time into things so that you do deliver the quality.
Well, I was just thinking of time management. It just reminds me how important is it also to plan the day ahead. For example, when you have screening calls, you have some new candidates that are coming to your ATS. You have all these other activities, juggling lots of different activities. So, what would be your tip for recruiters? How can they plan this ahead of the time and not be overwhelmed with either too many candidates in the pipeline or too few candidates, right? If you don't spend enough time sourcing candidates.
That's a very large question. We can talk for 2 hours about this.
A dedicated session.
Okay, I think that the number one thing is do not work on too many requirements at the same time. It is absolutely crucial that you know how many placements you want to make in the month and how many you can manage. And then you just work back from that. So let me give you an example. Most recruiters will be quite happy if they do 3 placements in a month. Yeah. I mean, with 3 placements, you can make already a lot of money. So if we've got 3 placements, how many candidates do you need? Well, typically, you're going to want to be able to send in 3 candidates. Yeah. So if you've got 3 requirements at 3 candidates for each, you've got to have 9 really good candidates. Now, what do you need to do beforehand to get these 9 really good candidates? And this is going to depend very much on the country you're in, on the ecosystem you're in, on the type of profiles you're looking for. But typically, you're not going to need that many candidates to get down to your 3. If you know your ecosystem well, if you've chosen your niche and really worked down to it, you can actually work with 100 candidates. You can make those 3 placements. You don't need thousands and thousands of candidates. You need the right candidates to fill these 3 roles. And if you look at it from a time management point of view and an organizational point of view, it's so 1 is really focusing on what your target is, amount of placements, and 2 is what do you have to do beforehand to get there. Most of my students that come to me, they want something this big, and actually I say no, you want something this big. And they go, yeah, but I need, look, that market, there's 1,000 requirements. I go, yeah, well, worldwide there's probably about 150 million jobs to fill. Why don't you make that your market? because between 1,000 jobs to fill and 150 million jobs to fill, there's no difference. They're both unachievable. No, what you need is 3 jobs to fill a month. How many candidates? No, you don't need 10,000 candidates. So to put things in perspective, my niche, I've got 217 candidates. No more. With that, I can make over 500,000 a year. If I work full time. I don't work full time, so I'm not making 500,000 a year, but that's what I could do. Yeah. And I think it's very important for recruiters that even people who have been in the business for 20 years, that they understand this, that they realize that in recruitment, smaller is better than bigger. Yeah. Now, another aspect of organization, and this is a very important one, if you're working as an agency recruiter, is you need to work on 3 different things. Because if you don't do all 3, you're going to have a major issue. The one thing is your short-term business. That's what you've got now. That's your life. That's these 3 requirements. That's your short-term. If you've got 3 requirements, you should be spending 70% of your time on these 3 requirements. No more, but definitely no less. If you don't have these 3, then you move on to the medium term. The medium term is your next business. It's once these 3 are filled, where's your next business coming from? This is 2 weeks to 2 months from now. Yeah. The minimum you should work on this is 20% of your time. If there's nothing on your short term, then this goes up a lot. This can go up to 80% of your time if need be, if you've got nothing here. But never go below 20%. I've had a situation where this was so big. I made 17 placements with one client in a very short period of time. It was crazy. It was so crazy that I didn't do the short term, the medium term, and I didn't do the last one, which is the long term. And then I did my last placement, and this is in France. It was just before the summer holidays. And in France, they go away on holidays and things really slow down a lot. And suddenly I was without business. Just because I hadn't worked on medium term and long term. So long term, minimum amount of time you want to spend on that is 10% of your time. If you don't have any of the short term, increase this. This is what's going to come quite a bit later. So it's 6 months to 18 months. For example, and you know this well because you used to be a CIO, you will have come in your organization and said, okay, for next year's budget, we're going to do a major upgrade of our system. You're not working on this now, but you as a CIO are going, yeah, I need to budget it now so that I can have the approval for next year. And me as a recruiter going, hi, Michelle, you as a CIO, what have you got planned for next year? And you'll tell me, yes, I've just had budget approval for next year. We're starting in February. I need to know that. I need to know this as early as possible so I can get ready to help you in February. That's this last one, the long term that you're going to work on also.
Awesome.
I've got one last tip. At some stage when I was in the first agency I was working at, I got angry with my boss. And I said to him, I'm spending too much time doing admin. I don't have enough time to go out and find candidates and sell to clients. And I said, I need some time to analyze what's going on. So what I did, I took a sheet of paper, like an agenda, and broke it down into 15-minute slots. And for a week, every 15 minutes, I noted down what I was doing. It was absolutely frightening because I discovered that a lot of the stuff was my own fault. I was not working in an efficient way. I was wasting time on, for example, updating the ATS. For example, not planning my calls in advance. For example, not having clear in my mind the information that I needed and that I needed to get out of the call to be able to go and answer the client properly, or the other way around, have a good intake with the hiring manager to be able to make sure that my researches were really well qualified. So I actually recommend to every recruiter in the world to do this, let's say once a year. Take a week, and every 15 minutes you note down. And all sorts of things can come out of there. So, for example, one of the things that I did, because in those days, I didn't have a headset. So I was calling, like this, half typing. It wasn't very, very practical, So I said to my boss, I need a headset. So I got a headset, and I had a long, 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 long wire, so I could walk around the office and then quickly run back when I had to type in. And I typed in the notes so I didn't forget them as I was talking to the candidate. Another thing I did, for example, was I would spend a lot of time, well, not a lot, but too much time helping candidates arrive at new sites. This is before COVID, so everybody traveled all the time, and people traveled. I was placing all over Europe, and they were going, "Oh, so how do I get there?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I'd quickly look things up, and that's a waste of time. So that was something that we gave to the back office as an added value to the candidates, that they could say, that's the site, that's the hotel, that's a tram to take there, that's a plane to take there, that's a train to take there. And all this came out of that 1 week of this noting down everything. And I think it's a very valuable exercise. I actually did it before getting into recruitment also. So you can only profit from it.
Awesome. Like so many interesting tips. Even the one with the intake call with the manager, the proper one to identify who exactly is he or she looking for, so that you have very, very qualified research. So what would be your tip about this particular step in the process? Because quite a lot of recruiters actually struggle with this, and sometimes it's sort of not their fault because they cannot get in touch with the hiring manager. Sometimes they sort of complain that they cannot get through the internal corporate HR, so they only see what was posted on some job board. They only see the public job opening, the job requirement. So what can they do in such case?
It's funny, Michelle. One of the assignments I was doing freelance as an in-house recruiter, I arrived there, and there was a requirement, and it was the chief financial officer. I mean, this guy was way high up in the organization. He needed somebody, and I said to my boss, I said, okay, we need to organize an intake with him. And she goes, "Oh, that's not going to work." What do you mean it's not going to work? How do I know what I'm going to recruit? And my boss said, "No, the problem is that the person who was there before you already did an intake. So he is going to get angry if you ask to do it again." And I said, "Then I can't work on the requirement." And she goes, "No, but you have to work on the requirement." I go, "I cannot do a job if I don't have all the information." She goes, "How long is it going to take?" I go, 1 hour. She goes, "An hour for a CFO? You don't get an hour out of a CFO, I mean, I think it was a 60 billion euro company, right? And this guy is right up there. And I think that's my number one lesson is, don't be frightened to say, I need this, because it is impossible to do a good recruitment job if you do not know what the client needs. And I do the same thing as an agency recruiter. Now, there's one important thing here, Michelle. I don't go through HR. I avoid HR like the plague. And the reason is exactly what you said. They're a barrier. So if you keep on hitting that barrier, you're not going to get anywhere. So I go around, I contact the hiring manager direct, and I make sure that I 100% understand what the need is. And I ask for all the bad things. Hi, hiring manager, why should somebody not take the job? Why should somebody not work for you? What is appalling about this job? I asked that also. Obviously, I ask all the good things. I've got to be able to give something to the candidate, you know. But you must push. You must absolutely ask. And one of the things that I see a lot of recruiters do is they don't prepare themselves in advance. So one of the things that I always do is I try and get information about the company, the hiring manager, the history of the need before getting in touch with the hiring manager. You need to know. For example, if sometimes I've had the case where I came along and I was the fourth recruitment agency to work on one requirement. Well, what's been going wrong? So if you hear that, it's going to be a difficult situation because nobody's managed to find that person before. But it also means it's going to be a very good situation because you're going to be able to push more to get exactly what you need, information. You're going to be able to push more to force the hiring manager to have a short and really well-structured process so that it doesn't take 5-6 weeks to go through the whole selection process. You're going to be able to push more to get the money that you want to get for your placement, because too many people nowadays are still working at way below the percentage that they should be working. I see people going, 10% and I'll place you somebody. I'm like, no, 30%, that's where you start, and then we'll see what's happening. Yeah. So probably if you take all that together, the number one rule is bypass HR. The number two rule is prepare yourself, get as much information as possible. And the number three rule is don't be frightened to push and ask what you need.
Awesome. Great tips. So is this something you also talk about during the training program that you mentioned just a while ago? Like what is actually the program about?
So my current training program is the full recruitment from A to Z. So it's agency recruitment, 360 degrees, placing either contractors or placing people in permanent jobs. And what I teach is the best way to find candidates, the best way to sell to clients, and everything in between. But I actually make it a loop because for me, you're never finished. It's not because you've placed somebody that's finished. You've got to stay in touch with the person. You develop that relationship because they can become a candidate 2-3 years later, or they can become a client. And so the whole aim of my course is there's 30 videos in the course. So there's 30 different steps. There's 30 different aspects of how to be a good recruiter. And one of the specific things about my course is I put the candidate first. Most recruiters, they go and say, yeah, but it's the client that's paying. And I'm saying, yeah, definitely it's the client that's paying. But if you do not have a candidate, they can be paying as much as they want. Without a candidate, you're not getting anywhere. And so I really have created that whole course around the candidate and how, for example, for me, there's no such thing as a bad candidate. Because somewhere, it's like people getting married, right? There's always somewhere that they can get together and people will assemble, if you see what I mean. And it's exactly the same thing with candidates. You might have this amazing, fantastic, super expensive candidate, but he won't fit in 80% of clients. But he'll fit up there in that little 20%. Or you might have somebody he's okay. He's not wow, but he's a fair price for what he asks. And you've probably got 40% of your clients that want somebody like that. And they're all good. You're serving a niche. And the more you serve that niche, the more you become known in that niche, the more the candidates will become your marketing tool. And so, so the course is 30 videos. It's 8.5 hours of video. There's coaching with me live. So I don't just say, go and do it. I support the people that are being trained. And yeah, and then normally end of May there's a new training on how to launch your recruitment business, which it's very interesting also, because that there is such an enormous demand on that one. It's less so, for example, here in Belgium, but in Eastern Europe a lot, in the United Kingdom a lot, in the United States and Canada a lot. People want to get out there and they want to do this, you know. So it's very exciting times.
So true. Well, now I feel like I have to join this program as well. Now you mentioned all these interesting, exciting areas, and that's exactly what I want to get better at. So count me in. Count me in. I'll definitely check it
I'll
out.
hold you to that, Michelle.
Yeah. It's just about time management that we talked about, you know. Yeah, I was just showing the calendar to my wife the other day, and she was pulling her hair, like, how can I ever, sustain this pace? So I guess I just need to squeeze it somewhere. But definitely, I would recommend it to everyone, because we know each other for some time, and your thoughts about recruitment and the approach, that's really awesome. And yeah, I also appreciate all the thoughts and insights that you were sharing with the audience. I mean, we could talk about this for the next 1 or 2 hours, right? But I also, don't want to take too much of your time right now. So yeah, I guess at some point we should also organize some follow-up session and dive deeper to some of these areas, because it's just really so interesting and exciting, right? This
With
whole
pleasure, Michelle.
recruitment and IT recruitment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. And you know the best
Yeah.
thing about all this is we're helping people.
So true, very true. Cool. And where can people get to know a bit more about you, and where can they find the course?
Okay, so 2 places. I would say LinkedIn, obviously. I'm Gavin Johnston 1 on LinkedIn. I didn't choose that. It just got given to me. And the other place is my website, everythingaboutrecruitment.com.
Awesome. So I'll link these two in the comments on YouTube and in the show notes on the podcast.
Excellent.
So wonderful. Yeah. Thanks a lot for joining. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and insights. It's been really helpful. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Michelle.
Thank you. It was fun. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.